Hello everyone, it's Dr. Sarah Gottfried. Welcome back to the Health Bridge. I'm here with Dr. Pedram Shojai.
Hi Sarah, hi everybody.
Hey, here's what I want to do today, Pedram. I want to talk about some of the genetic testing that you and I have done recently because we found out some interesting things. We found out that we have, both of us, what could be considered the explorer's gene. So our COMT or COMT enzyme is a little bit off.
Yeah, you know what? I could blame my parents, but instead I'm just going to do something about it.
Oh, good strategy. I think in general, when you get your blueprint, that's a really good concept. And, you know, today I want to talk a bit about genetics and then this also really important role of epigenetics, which is the non-DNA ways that your genes get influenced and how they are expressed in your body. And the cool part is this is a very sacred opportunity. So 50 to 80% of how your DNA is expressed can be influenced by the way that you eat, move, think, and supplement. So you and I have this issue where we break down dopamine in a part of our brain called the frontal lobe really fast and furious. We just like chew through that dopamine crazy fast. Have you noticed this in your own life, Pedram?
Yeah, and I would say it's probably what led me down the path that it did, right? Because the pleasure and the rewards that come from that are sometimes less interesting and or exhausting, and so all of a sudden meditation makes sense for me, and the way I engage in being an achiever or overachiever is a little different than kind of your average CEO. That's right,
and I think one of the ways that people can see this particular gene variation show up, if you're Val like we are, is that it can give you a bit of attention deficit, ADD or ADHD. It can also make you constantly be attracted to the latest shiny object, which is why it's affectionately known as the explorer's gene. There's a lot of different genes that control dopamine levels in the brain, and this one is just one of many.
So we both got it. We're both out there, kind of pioneering things in our field. But, I personally am guilty of leaving a mess behind me. And so it's nice to have systems. And I've, in my 20s, I created a mess. In my 30s, I realized that I need to work with people who don't have the explorer gene to then, go ahead and stake claims and, and build frontiers and do things, as I'm stumbling around looking at, shiny objects and found a way to make it work. But if you don't know that about yourself, you could get yourself into a lot of trouble.
So this is such a good point, Pedram. You're talking about kind of a systems-based approach to deal with some of these genetic variations that people have. And what you just described, I feel like you just described myself in my 20s and 30s, since apparently I think we're from a similar heritage. So in my 20s, I also had left a mess in my wake, just piles everywhere in my house. I wasn't very organized. And in my 30s, I became a yoga teacher. I also started my own practice and was able to hire someone who was the opposite, who was just like a really strict, super organized, almost OCD type. And that marriage, like being together with that particular medical assistant, really worked so well for me. So I love that we're talking about some of these genetic variations that people have and what you can do. So you can do things internally in your body. You can do things like drink green tea. That helps you with this particular gene variation. You can also take a supplement called L-theanine. Cognitive behavioral therapy has shown to be very helpful. And meditation. That's one of the best things you can do when you're always attracted to those shiny new objects.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. The prefrontal cortex, it's high in serotonergic neurons, but you got a fire up there, right? So if you're not using it, it's really easy with our disposition, it's really easy to be ADD in a way that's not cool, right? And so for me, it takes a conscious effort to kind of load energy up into the prefrontal cortex, get really clear about my day and my intention for the day, and then execute on that, and then block out the outside world, knowing that if I see the shiny object, I'm going to double click on it or whatever that is.
Yeah, this is good. I think it's also helpful to say there's certain careers that really lend themselves to people like us who have the explorer's gene and have, this tendency toward ADD and being attracted to the shiny objects. So being an entrepreneur is a really good example where you can really control your environment Also, being in sales, it tends to be that people with ADD, especially my awesome co-host, tend to be the life of the party, kind of more charismatic and magnanimous, and it's sort of all along that same path. If you're going to be an explorer, you got to get some people to come with you. So we tend to be pretty good leaders, especially if we have folks working with us side by side who can help us stay organized.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because people will follow you as an explorer if they know you're not going to take them off over a ledge as well, right? And so you could be magnanimous, but at the same time, if you're not mindful of your balance, the explorer doesn't come back home. And so those are the deficits and the challenges that you just work around, right? Like, I'd love to see, the color scale and the Colby and all these things lined up with these genetic tests in the next few years, and see how we can find all these correlations. Because again, it's not a sentence, but it's kind of like, astrology, if you will. It's like, okay, well, I'm a Cancer and with an Aquarius rising, and so these are my tendencies. Wow, that is pretty accurate. But how do I use that to my benefit? How do I have that benefit my family? And how do I use that to leverage my health and my vitality?
Amen, brother. And for people who are listening who are saying, hey, I think I have that gene, I want to test myself, I just want to let you know there's many different ways that you can do some direct-to-consumer testing. One example is 23andMe. Pedram and I happen to do a different type of test called the Genomind. And if you're signed up for our list, if you go to healthbridgeshow.com and you opt in, you just leave your email, we will send you these resources and links so that you can learn more about whether you have the Explorer gene.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. The time that we live in is just so interesting. I mean, we're figuring things out. That used to be, Vedic astrology, and now you're like, well, check it out. This gene thing kind of codes for what my horoscope was saying all along. That's odd. And so I'm not saying we're getting one-to-one correlation on stuff, but it's a really interesting time. And data doesn't hurt, right?
Data doesn't hurt.
The more you know about yourself, right, is better.
So true. Of course, I'm still using a Vedic astrologer, but yes, I like to do the genetic testing and have the Vedic astrologer.
Yeah, because guess what? The Vedic astrology has been around for 6,000 years, and it seems to also correlate, and just because we don't understand it, it doesn't mean it's wrong. So, a good scientist looks at all data, and so for you guys listening, look at your data. I mean, Sarah and I are doing this. We're going public with it. I don't care, right? I'm not ashamed of it. I was born with it. And it's something that I have to manage and work around, as does Sarah. And we've created pretty cool lives around these dispositions because we understand ourselves better. But being able to do that takes a step back and a little self-analysis to be like, oh, that's interesting. How would I use my time most appropriately so that this serves me?
I would even say that our lives are better for it. Like, knowing this data, it's so enchanting learning about yourself, but not in a egoic, creepy way, but to really understand, okay, I've got this gene that makes me ADD. I can drink green tea in the morning or take L-theanine, and I can also get some people to help me who are super organized. Like, that, to me, is the path of full empowerment.
Amen, sister. So, Genomind, 23andMe, there's tons of that stuff. We'll give you guys resources on thehealthbridgeshow.com. This stuff is really cool. We're going to be doing more and more of this into the next season and really kind of walking with you guys on this. We're not going to recommend things that we haven't done ourselves. We are the explorers, so come on, let's go party, guys.
Okay, this is the Explorers saying goodbye. Thanks so much for joining the show. We love you guys.
Love you guys. See you next time.